It is December 2nd, 1943. The port of Bari, southern Italy. World War II is still raging. And on this particular evening, the harbor is full of Allied supply ships, unloading cargo under cover of darkness. What nobody on the docks knows is that one of those ships, the SS John Harvey, is carrying a secret. A very dangerous secret. 2,000 mustard gas bombs. Chemical weapons left over from World War I. Stockpiled just in case the Germans used them first. Hidden below deck. Undisclosed even to the harbor master. At 7:30 p.m., the German Luftwaffe arrives. Within minutes, 19 Allied ships are sinking. The John Harvey explodes, and 2,000 mustard gas bombs release their contents directly into the harbor. What follows is one of the worst chemical weapons disasters in history. Sailors burning from the inside. Survivors being pulled from the water, soaked in a toxic oily slick they cannot see and cannot smell. Hundreds dead. Hundreds more dying slowly over the following days. And in the middle of this catastrophe, a lieutenant colonel named Stewart Alexander is sent to investigate. What he finds in those autopsies accidentally points medicine toward one of its greatest discoveries. Welcome to Drug Tales with Dr. Saha, where every week we bring you the remarkable, surprising, and deeply human stories behind the medicines that changed the world, perfect for whenever you have a few minutes and a curious mind. Today, chemotherapy, the story of how a weapon designed to kill accidentally became a medicine designed to heal. Let's get into it. Stewart Alexander was a physician and chemical weapons expert. His job was to figure out what had happened at Bari, and what he found was deeply unsettling. The mustard gas had not killed its victims the way bullets kill. It had attacked their cells. Specifically, it had devastated the white blood cells, the bone marrow, the lymphatic tissue. The rapidly dividing cells of the immune system had been wiped out almost completely. Alexander documented this meticulously, sent his report up the chain of command, and the military, in its infinite wisdom, immediately classified the entire incident. The mustard gas disaster at Bari officially did not happen, for years. But Alexander's observations did not disappear. They found their way to two pharmacologists at Yale University, Louis Goodman and Alfred Gilman, who had been quietly working on a classified military project, studying whether nitrogen mustard, a close relative of mustard gas, could be used as a weapon. And they had an extraordinary idea. Here is the insight that changed everything. Cancer cells, like the white blood cells mustard gas destroyed, are rapidly dividing cells. They divide faster than almost any other cells in the body, and rapidly dividing cells are exquisitely sensitive to anything that disrupts cell division. Goodman and Gilman thought, what if we use nitrogen mustard, not to kill soldiers, but to kill cancer cells? Think of it like this. Imagine a city where most buildings are solid and stable, standing quietly, not doing very much. But in one neighborhood, a construction frenzy is happening. Buildings going up constantly, workers everywhere, chaos and activity. Now imagine releasing something that specifically targets construction activity. The stable buildings are largely unaffected, but the neighborhood under constant construction is devastated. That is what chemotherapy does. It targets the construction frenzy of cancer, the rapidly dividing cells that cannot stop building. The normal cells, which divide slowly or not at all, are largely spared. Largely, not entirely, which is why chemotherapy has side effects. Hair follicles divide rapidly, so does the gut lining, so does bone marrow. These get caught in the crossfire. But the cancer, the relentless construction site that will not stop, gets hit hardest. Goodman and Gilman tested nitrogen mustard first in mice. It worked. Tumors shrank. Then they found a patient, a man referred to only as JD in the medical literature, a lymphoma patient who had failed every other treatment, who had tumors so large he could barely move his jaw. In August 1942, they injected him with nitrogen mustard, and within days the tumors began to shrink. Not disappear, not a cure, but shrink. Dramatically and reproducibly. For the first time in history, a chemical had demonstrably reduced a human cancer. JD relapsed after a few weeks, as did subsequent patients. But the principle was proven. Cancer could be chemically targeted. That single observation, born from a chemical weapons disaster in an Italian harbor, launched an entirely new field of medicine. Today, chemotherapy encompasses hundreds of different drugs, each targeting cancer in different ways. Some disrupting DNA replication, some blocking cell division directly, some cutting off the blood supply to tumors. And combined with surgery, radiation, immunotherapy, and targeted therapies, chemotherapy has transformed cancer from an almost universally fatal diagnosis to a condition that millions of people survive. It is not perfect. The side effects are real and sometimes devastating. The crossfire still catches healthy cells, and for some cancers, we are still not winning. But every oncologist treating cancer today, every patient who survived, every family that got more time, stands on the foundation of an observation made in an Italian harbor during a disaster that the military tried to erase from history. The poison became the cure, not because anyone planned it, but because one physician, in the middle of one of the worst chemical weapons disasters in history, wrote down what he saw and refused to let it be forgotten. If you enjoyed this story, share it with someone who loves a good one, whether they are a researcher, a scientist, a doctor, a nurse, a student, or simply someone with a curious mind. Drop any drug or discovery you want covered in the comments. Subscribe so you never miss a story. Next week, another extraordinary one. See you then.